Is this thing on?
If you like rock music, punk, metal or blues, then you've come to the right place, because we like it too. It's Soundcheck. It's Soundcheck. It's Soundcheck. Check, check, check.
I love it. Great.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soundcheck, the rock and roll and alternative music podcast here at Central Michigan Life. My name is Michael Livingston. As always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew Mullen.
And our podcast producer,
Ben Ackley.
And today we're talking about music, as always. But first, we have some housekeeping. We have a Twitter. You can follow us at SCheckOfficial. You can follow my own Twitter at Michael C. Live.
You can follow me at Andrew Mullen 4.
Can't follow me.
And now, with that out of the way, I would recommend you go and check out last week's episode. For the love of God, check out last week's episode. A lot of time and effort went into that, especially on Ben's part. We were trying to record it out of working through all of our busy schedules, and I was taking breaks from like my Model United Nations thing in order to record that, and it came out like amazing, and that's to do thanks to Ben Ackley, our podcast producer. He's amazing. Go check that out.
Yes.
It's probably the best episode we've ever recorded, honestly.
I don't know if I'll say that far, but it's up there, and I think definitely with the editing, it definitely helps. So yes, thank you, Ben, so much for making that episode happen. But of course, we took a trip to hell last week. It was a crazy time, but luckily we managed to get away. The devil set us free, which is appropriate because now we're off to talk about. Actually, it's a very good thing because now we're going to talk about one of Michael's favorite bands. Am I right?
Yes. We're talking about Sonic Youth today, one of my all-time favorite acts because they fall into that sweet spot. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned the sweet spot on the episode before, but for me, the greatest decade in music history is between 1985 and 1995. Just because you have all this amazing pre-grunge, pre-pop punk stuff coming out of the late 80s, mainly from the East Coast, Massachusetts, New York, and stuff like that. I'm talking Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., Butthole Surfers, all of the REM too, all of the kind of college rock scene that I tend to gravitate towards the most out of any era in music. And I discovered Sonic Youth just because my parents would be playing it when I was a kid. But it was actually, I discovered Thurston Moore's solo career just on my own. And that eventually led me back to Sonic Youth. And I'll touch on that a little more later. But has Sonic Youth ever been in your guys' life? I know, Andrew, this was something that's been tossed at you a couple times, but this is kind of the first time you really dived in. Is that true?
I'd say it's fairly accurate. I mean, of course, I knew of Sonic Youth. I mean, if you're a huge music fan, especially someone like the three of us, you can't escape that name. You can't escape some of the stuff. Of course, I knew Goo. I think I have it on CD. I'd heard bits and pieces of Daydream Nation and Experimental Jet Set and Rather Ripped. Some of those songs were familiar to me. However, it was just kind of really that was pretty much the extent of it. It was a very surface level knowledge of what they were. I mean, obviously I knew who Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon were and how good of a front man and woman respectively they are. But yeah, beyond like the technical aspects and the really just sinking my teeth into the music, that really hadn't happened started till recently. I have a significant other who loves Sonic Youth a lot, and she made me a playlist a few months ago. I think it was like 4 at this point, to kind of help me start kind of diving through. So a little bit earlier this year, I was kind of starting to explore a little bit. And obviously this researching for this episode was the real big catalyst, kind of really diving into their entire discography. And I have to say, I was, like I expected, I was rather pleased. You know, I always kind of wanted to get into Sonic Youth. I was always kind of afraid to, though. They have one of those discographies, as I like to put it, pretty much the ones that are gigantic and huge with a bunch of different eras and music evolutions. I'm like, I don't know where to start. I'm scared. So that's kind of what happened with Sonic Youth. And that's kind of why I avoided doing this for so long. And while it was a bit of an exhaustive, chaotic week for me, I managed to listen to every record that studio record that Sonic Youth has to offer, all 15 of them. And certainly there are ones that I was not as big a fan of. You'll probably figure out which one of those later on in the episode. But no, I think Sonic Youth is a great band and a great 80s alternative rock act, wherever you want to put them, you know, in that sphere. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I don't know if I put them up there with my favorite yet, but, you know, I do need more time with them. But yes, I'm very happy, Michael, you finally pushed me to go run through their discography.
What about you, Ben? When did Sonic Youth appear in your life?
Well, Andrew was talking about how he had sort of a surface level knowledge of Sonic Youth. Mine would be, what's above surface level? It's like bird's eye view, maybe. I don't know. I was familiar with Kim and Thurston through Dim Stars, their mid-90s project that they did with Richard Hell, because I was really into Richard Hell, and he has 2 records. So I wanted to hear as much of that as I could. His voice was shot by then. I think that stuff's fine. But anyway, that was my familiarity. It was like I knew them. The most I've ever heard someone talk about Sonic Youth is you. And it's always just in passing. They'll come up. So that's really been my touchstone, was some shit like they did with Richard Hell, and then you just talking about them. So obviously, if one of my best friends is talking about a band, I want to get to know them, which it took this episode to do it. I had, I knew Teenage Riot. I had seen the album covers. I had seen Bad Moon Rising and Daydream Nation, and I'd seen a lot of this artwork around, and I'd really liked the artwork, but I really hadn't heard the music. So I'm going to say that I find Sonic Youth to be a very polarizing band, and I think this is going to be an interesting episode because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys touched on some really important things. And before we dive into what we're going to do this episode, I'll just give a preface of the main players we're going to be mentioning. Sonic Youth started in the early 80s when Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon came together. They would later be married, and one of the most iconic couples in alternative rock. They joined up with Lee Ronaldo, lead guitarist, and Steve Shelley, their drummer, for most of their years, not really the early years, but started off as kind of a no-waves act and eventually formed into their own brand and their own style of chaotic noise meets punk meets college rock, whatever you want to call it. And it's kind of defined that generation. Sonic Youth music videos are kind of iconic. Their album artwork, obviously, the progression that they made, and the friends that they made along the way. I mean, Ben mentioned one collaborative project, but that's one of dozens. Kim, Thurston, Lee, they all have their own solo projects. They all have collaborated with other artists. And I have to almost guarantee you, if you're talking about an artist from that era, chances are they're friends with either Kim or Thurston or Lee or whoever it may be, or they've worked with someone or anything like that. Everyone from the grunge age to some metal acts, even 90s hip hop people know who Sonic Youth are. They're just like this ever-present being throughout that music, that era in music. So it's going to be pretty interesting to dive into such a polarizing discography, as Ben puts it, because I would agree with that. They have their high points, they have their low points, and for the most part, Ben, Andrew, and I disagree on where those points are. So to format that for this episode, we thought of no better way to do it than with a tier list of each album, ranking them from S being the highest and E being the lowest. We're going to have to compromise a little bit. We're going to have to hear each other out. You're going to hear some highlights from each of the albums in the form of one song to transition from the next album to the next. And it's going to be a pretty fucking awesome episode because this is one of my favorite bands. And I can think of no better way to dive into a discography that's so expansive than with this format. I'm going to be having the reins over here, putting the albums where they need to be. We're going to have 4 minutes to decide where we want to put them and kind of debate why they deserve that particular spot. Without further ado, do you guys have anything to add before we launch into this?
I did. Right before we jumped in to the meat of this episode, I did want to ask you one question, Michael, kind of surrounding the band's sound particularly. I know you had mentioned to us previously, and I'm sure you're going to go a little more in depth as we go throughout the discography history, but you had sent me and Ben like a video before. I think it was like an interview with Lee Ronaldo, kind of talking about, you know, his gear and his whatnot. And of course, in researching for this episode, you know, I hear a lot of that discussed, you know, talking about Lee, talking about Thurston. And, you know, listening to this discography, I want to put this right. I think, again, I don't know who the real, like the best guitarist is between the two, but I mean, I heard some decent picking. I heard some good licks, but technically speaking, from a musicianship standpoint, I don't know if like that's where Sonic Youth's strength is, you know, as far as the music goes. From what you told me, from what I've read, that kind of sounds more like it's from the gear, it's from you know, as far, you know, how they kind of set up that sound, finding that perfect weird guitar tone for the stuff. And I think that's where Sonic Youth really shines. I wanted to know, do you think that's like kind of an accurate way of describing it, or if there's a better way to kind of put Sonic Youth's overall sound?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned it on our shoegaze episode. For anyone who hasn't heard that, go check it out. It's 10 songs to get you into shoegaze. But I love bands that just use noise to characterize their sounds, atmosphere, and kind of putting you in this state of mind, in this world that they're trying to make. While I love technical playing, as I mentioned in Math Rock, this is really where Sonic Youth is going to shine, is how their production, how they compose these songs, how many layers each of these songs have. And yeah, the amount of gear they use on some of this is just insane. Each of the members of Sonic Youth probably own hundreds of guitars, hundreds of musical instruments, hundreds of synthesizers, and different ways to put songs together. And I thought it would serve kind of every party in here. Ben, who kind of prefers chaotically putting songs together, Andrew, who kind of maybe prefers a more crafted approach, a little more thought to it. And it just kind of, Sonic Youth's one of those bands that you're going to find something you like, whether it's the noisier side, whether it's the more technical side, it's all there. That would be the long answer to your question, Andrew.
All right. Sounds good.
Are you ready, guys?
I'm more than ready.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm going to start the clock. We're going to go in chronological order. And this is just LP releases, not EPs, not singles, anything like that. These are the 15 main studio releases. 4 minutes on the clock. Let's start with Confusion is Sex, boys, released in 1983. And I think we can all admit it's dog shit.
Oh, boy.
Shit. Garbage.
Yeah. I think confusion is a great word to put in this title because I was a little confused by what the hell this was.
I think this album has a purpose. It's, you know, kind of meant to be a benchmark into the no wave scene. You know, it has its roots there, but at the end of the day, it's not even looked at as a pinnacle point in the no wave scene. Ben can probably speak on that. It's harsh, it's abrasive, it might fit that aesthetic. But yeah, it's low on the list for me just because I know they capitalize on that sound later.
Right.
You know, what do you think?
We're starting here, and this is a good place to start because this is a place that we all agree on. So I listened to discographies chronologically, and I had so little familiarity with Sonic Youth. This is where I started, and I just rolled on. And I was listening to this, and I was like, oh, come on. Oh, God, it's not all going to sound like this, right? Like I talked to Andrew about it the other day. I think the word that I would use to describe this is amateurish. There's a cover on here of I Want to Be Your Dog by the Stooges. And my band in high school used to play that song. And it just sounds like my band in high school playing that song. Like the singing is not good. The guitar playing is passable. This whole thing is just, it's a case of this band is a big deal from some of their later great work. So let's, this is the start of it. I guess some people probably hold this up and say it's great. It's not. It's shit. It sucks.
What about you, Andrew?
Well, I believe I had this one. I'll give my tier ranking for each of these, my personal one at least. I put this one in D tier. I didn't put any albums in E, although this one kind of straight out the line. In fact, this is at the very bottom. I think this is probably the worst Sonic Youth offering that they have. It's the worst thing Sonic Youth has to offer. And I can appreciate some avant-garde stuff, some noise rock stuff, and I can have some appreciation for it, even if I'm not personally into it. But yeah, I think Ben kind of was pretty much there when he said amateurish. I mean, this album came across like they were trying to do all this atmospheric stuff, and it's kind of cool, but it's undone when like Thurston's shouting, "She's in a bad mode!" Like it's bratty and immature in all the worst ways an album or music can sound bratty and immature. It doesn't do much for me. I mean, I guess I kind of like the Stooges cover. I mean, it wasn't that great, but I mean, hell, I heard another cover they did many years later of like Mudhoney's "Don't Touch Me, I'm Sick." I think that cover is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. I think in comparison, when you compare that cover to this, I think the Stooges one is fine, but yeah, I can't see myself ever going back to Confusion is Sex, to be perfectly honest.
I would agree with you guys, and with that, I think we can confidently put this into the E tier. It's okay to suck when you first start out, as long as you eventually become great. Next segment. 4 minutes on the clock. Let's talk about Bad Moon Rising. You've actually heard a song from this in the last episode. It launched us into our audio drama. Halloween did. For this one, for me, I think this is the best out of the no wave era Sonic Youth, just because it's really aesthetically pleasing. It's the most aesthetically consistent. It really just stands as kind of a point in the band's career where they capitalized on the no wave sound and did it in a way that made them stand out from the other acts. It's still not relatively high. I would put this in C or B range, but what did you guys think?
Yeah, I think I had my hopes up for this one. I saw the album cover. I think that this, for me, if this was a ranking of artwork, this would be number one. This would be S tier for me. But I saw the album cover. I knew Halloween. And honestly, beyond that, it is a very cohesive, coherent release. I just didn't find it all that enjoyable. Like, there wasn't that much for me to grab onto. Obviously, out of the three of us, I'm probably the most traditional music listener, pop music listener, per se. I like Death Valley 69 because they say 69 a lot, and I like Manson Murders stuff. So I found that interesting. I think it's cohesive. I think it's a good fall album. I had it in D because it just bored me at the end of the day, though.
What about you, Andrew?
I was a little mixed. I wasn't really sure where to put this one. I ended up putting it at the bottom of C tier for me, although I was trying to at least kind of remain objective with everything, because I actually personally found this record kind of charming in a weird way. I think the band started to recognize a lot of their flaws coming after Confusion is Sex with their early no wave stuff, and they were trying to start to really expand on the sound, try to start to improve on a lot of these things. I think Kim Gordon, especially on this record, was really finding her place as a front woman. And, it still has a lot of the same problems, a lot of these really long, drawn-out, like, atmospheric stuff from Sonic Youth that just didn't go anywhere. But I felt like a lot of the atmosphere served more of a purpose this time. It was slightly, and I mean only slightly more tuneful on this record, but again, I really liked how this album flowed. I think that's where the songwriting actually really comes into a stretch. Like this, like the actual record, there's some bonus tracks, and I liked them, but I think the actual album itself kind of feels like one drawn out song in the way that everything just kind of seamlessly flows together. And I was surprised to hear something like this actually do that so well. I like the lyrical ideas in this record as well. It kind of explored the dark side of Americana, from my understanding, referencing a lot of terrible things happening in America. And well, it was the 80s. There's certainly no shortage of that stuff. So yeah, I as primitive as it kind of is, I think that actually works as it helps the record's aesthetic. It's Halloweeny, fall, scary stuff. As primitive as it is, I think it actually helps make it more charming, even though it does have some of the same flaws that a lot of the same flaws that Confusion of Sex had. I was able to overlook more of them because of the aesthetic and the way it was able to. The way they crafted this record together. Thurston still has more to go as a vocalist. I'd like to hear more interesting guitar playing, which we will be getting moving forward. But for right now, yeah, this is just a little charming record that I can see myself putting on every once in a while. So
I think we'll meet a good compromise here, because I had it in B, Ben had it in D, and you had it in C. Can we meet right in the middle there, Ben, and do a C?
Works for me.
Cool. All right. Starting on our next release, we are going to Evil, which is now Sonic Youth is on SST Records. You'll know that famously as Greg Gins from Black Flag. That's his label. And now they're surrounded by all these punk guys, but they're still trying to cling on to this no-wave sound. And I see Evil as a really transitional record. This is the SST age in general is really transitional. They're going from this atmospheric, no-wavy sound to more punky, a little more melodic, a little more bob your head kind of music. And, for this one, though, I don't think it's the strongest out of the SST era. That would be the next one's sister. I had this in B simply because I love Kim on this record. I loved, what was the song? The Shadow of a Doubt. I think that was a perfect atmospheric song with the harmonics and everything. It just really stood out. And Green Light is the precursor to them getting a little more punky, a little more agitated. So I put it in B personally, but I would be okay with it going a little lower just because it's still a transitional album, and there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm sure the band, if they were able to redo that album, they would. Let's start with Andrew, though. Andrew, what did you think?
It's interesting to call this a transition record, because I think I've said in the show before, I've often very interested in an artist's transition record, because I think that's where you can get some really interesting sounds. On this case, I'm a little more indifferent. I think you can definitely hear improvements. They're definitely moving away from that no-wave stuff, which I think ended up proving a large benefit for them. And I think sounds like SST was a kind of a good influence on them in this case, kind of steering them in a more punky, louder direction. But you can still tell that they're still trying to struggle finding their ways. I agree with you. I think Kim was absolutely fantastic, and I think she's she's really started to come on her own at this point. And there was actually some songs in there that actually had hooks, which I appreciated. Stuff like Star Power, stuff like In the Kingdom. Those are songs that were really big highlights for me. But in the end, I was just kind of like, I want more from this. So I ended up putting it in, I think at the bottom of B tier. But again, I think C tier is a pretty decent place to put it.
Yeah. Well, I have a confession to make at the start of this. For a long period of this discography, I do not like Kim Gordon's voice. I think she has a very unique voice, and I can see how people like it, but I don't know. That I put Evil in E, which I would not do if I was doing it objectively at this moment. I'd probably put it, closer to C, like right after Bad Moon Rising, as one of the. I think it's a pretty good record. I listened to the first two Sonic Youth albums, and then I listened to this, and this was more, like getting closer to just ordinary indie of the time period. Mm-hmm. But I was full of rage because I had listened to Confusion is Sex, and I was like, oh my God, stop. And then I had listened to Bad Moon Rising, and it was like one song essentially. And I just really wanted, I wanted to hear some fucking hooks, and I guess I kind of got them here, but not really. And I wasn't there yet. C tier is where I'd put this. It's just, it's really not that memorable for me. I do not remember a lot of this album.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with you there. Are we going to agree? We'll put it C tier, but definitely after Bad Moon Rising.
Yeah, I think close. I think C tier is a good place. Michael, is there a song that you'd want to highlight from this record before we move on?
Like I said, Green Light is the one for me. I guess we can keep on rolling then, because we're clearing these pretty quick. Another 4 minutes on the clock, and now we're going to Sister. And I got to talk about this one for a hot minute, because Sister is my favorite Sonic Youth record because it's still noisy as hell. Every song sounds like a beehive, just like buzzing in your ears, and just like, so abrasive, so insane, but also so incredibly catchy. Stereo Sanctity. I don't know. That's my favorite Sonic Youth song. Catholic Block is another one. Just like tons of underrated stuff, and Schizophrenia being the big one from this one. Just like those powerful chords that you get all throughout there. You finally get some hooks. But towards the B side of the record, you get what Sonic Youth is famous for, and that noisy stuff. Pipeline, Kill Time. That's a great Lee Ronaldo cut. Tough Gnarl too. Hotwire My Heart, that's a cover. I thought that was a strong cover. Sonic Youth's not known for strong covers, but I thought that one was okay. I had this one in S tier, guys. I know you're going to disagree, and that's okay, because I've listened to Sonic Youth longer and I'm willing to compromise, but I don't know if I can put it under C. Definitely not. Maybe not even under B. But what did you think?
I'll take this one. So, yeah, this is. I remember messaging y'all in the group chat when I started listening to Sister, and I was like, "Oh my God, you guys! There are like drums, and the tempos are varying, and there are hooks. I'm starting to understand this. For me, Sister is my starting to understand album. I had it in D. My list's kind of rash, honestly. I had it in D just because there wasn't a lot that stuck out to me. I really loved the song Tough Gnarl. I liked what was the opener on this. Schizophrenia is pretty cool, but to me, I don't know. I feel like I've heard stuff similar that I liked more. I think that Thurston Moore is getting into his really good singing here. Like, it took him a few albums to get there and really figure out his voice, but I think he's getting there here, and I think the songs are getting stronger. And this is, you're watching the band grow here, and we're getting to the first record where I enjoyed myself. So that is a big positive. And I'd be fine with putting it in B. I'd definitely be fine with putting it above all that we've talked about so far.
Michael, I'm actually kind of pretty close to you. I put Sister at the bottom of S tier. I know you had said that listening to Sonic Youth. We were talking, and you'd said that this was going to go in S tier, and really I couldn't really disagree, and kind of made me think that it should go in S tier as well. I don't know. I think this is so bizarre to me that we jumped just from Evil, which was okay. It was decent. It had some stuff. Liked it. There were actually a couple tracks that I remember that were kind of memorable to me, and we jumped to this, and it's just the quality difference is just insane to me. We're getting a lot more tremolo picking, really fierce, aggressive tremolo picking, and just a sonic assault now. Like they're really starting to lean into the punk stuff, and of course, obviously that's gonna resonate with me quite a bit. Glad you mentioned Catholic Block. If there's any song I would highlight, it's probably gonna be that one. I think that's a tremendous song. Stare Sanctity is great, of course, as well. I mean, really, I think because typically I try to keep track of the songs that I liked in an album, like liking them on Spotify, and I have every song on here liked. I really enjoyed this. I think musically, the band's now finally starting to come on their own. They're finally starting to diversify themselves. And this kind of almost feels like a new era. It's definitely still has some atmosphere to it, but this is moving towards a much louder, a more aggressive version of Sonic Youth.
For sure. Ben, would you be willing to compromise and put it in A tier? Just give me this one.
You got it, baby. Put it there.
I think it's a perfect place for it. Top of 8.
All right, now we're getting into the big boys. This is the big boys era. We're going to 1988, and it's the one that everyone looks at besides Goo. This is the one where everyone kind of looks at that candle on the cover and they're like, okay, there it is. It's Daydream Nation. And this one's been mixed in so many different ways. And Teenage Riot, of course, is the big single off this that you hear everywhere, just like the anthem of the late 80s, early 90s, really. This album is atmospheric. It takes you back. It kind of puts you in an ethereal state, but somehow is still just assaulting you with that noise. It has the fast song, Silver Rocket, for one. The Sprawl. The Sprawl is my favorite Kim Gordon song, just flat out. Hey Joni is a great Lee Ronaldo one. But, just so much variety and so much flavor on this record, so much character. It's the trademark Sonic Youth sound for me. And, I can be that guy. I can be that pretentious guy and say, oh, it's not as good as the other records. Let's put it in like B or something. But I really cannot argue. It's S tier for me. And it never stopped being S tier for me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Before I go, Michael, can I ask you a question? So I know Goo is probably the most I don't know if it's the most like accessible record, but it's probably the most commercially like for any casual fan of Sonic Youth. That's probably the most well-known record. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Do you think then Daydream Nation is the hardcore fans' favorite record?
It's the hardcore fans' favorite record that they know cannot be like undermined or disputed as being just like amazing.
Okay.
Like Goo, you can have your doubts with you. You can say it's a little cheesy, the lyrics aren't there. You can say it's a little forced, but like Daydream Nation is just creativity. It's just passion. It's everything Sonic Youth's been leading up to. I mean, it's just undisputed, just a champion of records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I have to agree. I mean, there's one record I personally enjoyed more, and we'll get to that later. But if that record didn't exist, yeah, Daydream Nation's it for me. And I know that's probably a very normie choice, but I don't care. This record kicks ass in every way. Like, again, you have a lot of fire behind this band. I don't know if this band has ever sounded as aggressive and epic and just wild as they did on this record, while also maintaining, like you said, Michael, some of that atmosphere, some of that just all the stuff that you love about Sonic Youth still a part of it. And I think this is where I think both Thurston and Kim are great. And I want to use this record to highlight kind of my thoughts on them real quick, because both of them, I don't think are good vocalists, to be honest. Like, again, I'm going to refer back to that Touch Me I'm Sick cover. Thurston sounds terrible on that. I'm just going to say he can't sing. He's not Mark Arm. But I think as a front man and a front woman, they're really good in that sense. They're trying to convey emotion, trying to convey the atmosphere. Kim has this really cool, calculated delivery that I love. And, you know, Thurston, you know, has this kind of wild energy about him that I also really like. But they both dial it down when they need to. I think this is the record where they're really like starting to understand, okay, these are our weaknesses. We can't really like super high, can't hit these great vocal ranges. Let's work around that. Hey, we're not the most, you know, musicianship wise and the most technically gifted musicians. Let's, you know, just go all on the assault with these tremolo picks. Let's go in and out. There's all this noise and just really long passages where we're kind of throwing around licks every now and again. I think this is where they really start to understand their weaknesses and they start to build around that, which I really appreciate. S tier, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one's definitely up there for me. It was not my absolute favorite, but Andrew's exactly right. When you're listening to Daydream Nation, you're hearing a band really figure out how they should sound, and they're right. This is almost perfect. This is a record where lots of stuff stands out to me right away. Teenage Riot, obviously. Eric's Trip, Total Trash has a sick riff. I love that. Hey Johnny is amazing. Candle. Kissability is probably my favorite Kim Gordon song, although we might hear one later that I like more. But just you know, boiling it down, figuring out exactly how they should sound. And honestly, I mean, I'm probably even more of a normie by liking Goo more, but we'll get there. This is excellent. The only issue I really ever had was song length, which I am going to have a little talk about song length later. You know, I'm the song length guy. I don't think that Hyperstation needs to be 7 minutes long. I don't think Hyperstation needs to be on the album. But if Daydream Nation could have done anything better, I think they could have used some editing. But other than that, A tier for me. I'm so comfortable putting it in the S tier. I've seen this album cover everywhere, and I get why people love it. And I'm getting there.
All righty.
Michael, before we move on, any song you want to highlight for us?
Ooh, definitely The Sprawl. Kim Gordon. Fuck you is fuck you. That's the line. That's the line. Fuck you, simple enough. we'll continue on. This is the album cover that you really see everywhere. We won't read out that phrase right in front of you, but Goo has all of the. It just sounds like the '90s. It's the turn of the decade going into 1990, and they fully embrace it. I mean, Dirty Boots, just so memorable. That music video of like the under the show and the two kids like falling in love and like they stage dive and stuff. It's just like it's the 90s dream. It really is. And then there's just other stuff on here that gets so deep with the lyrics and just cuts you so much, like Tunic, the one that it goes right into, like that's a great Kim Gordon one. And then like Cool Thing obviously is amazing. You've heard that before on our political anthems one. Great feminist message with that. And then Moat, just Lee Ronaldo coming out of the gate with just a strong song. This album though for me falls in A tier rather than S tier simply because some of the songs don't really hit. Not a friend of my friend Goo, or I'm not a friend of that song, I should say. Cinderella's Big Score, just like really when it gets to the end, I just kind of fall off. Everything after Disappear really just like doesn't really hit for me. But just like the singles that came off of this album made it good, made it great, and made it memorable. At least for me. What'd you guys think?
Want me to go, Ben?
Yeah, hit it, Andrew.
Sure. All right. Obviously, I knew Goo. This is one of the only Sonic Youth record I think I owned before this, and I know it's such a... Oh, all the hardcore Sonic Youth fans, they hate me. That's okay. You're going to hate me even more, Move Gord. Guarantee it. No, I agree with you, Michael, 100%. I think Goo belongs right next tier. It's close. It's so close hitting that next tier level, but it just has a couple. It does fall out at the end for me as well. I think My Friend Goo is also kind of goofy. I'm not really for it. And I think when you get to something like Moat, I think that starts to set a trend where, and granted, it honestly probably started well before it, but like the Moat is where I really started to notice they like to take their sweet time ending songs, like way too long. It's just noise, all this feedback and whatever. And I think the Moat's a good example. It's like, oh, that song would be really good if they ended it like 2 minutes instead of just do like, we're going to do feedback forever. Okay, cool. As much as I do think there are some flaws with this record, I mean, Goo Stand is popular. I think it's popular for a reason. It's a great record, cool thing. Arguably one of the most well-known, definitely one of the most well-known songs, and you can see why it's catchy. It's got this great attitude about it. Dirty Boots is great. Song for I love, like, the first half of this record is phenomenal, like, truly phenomenal. I think right up there with the stuff, quality-wise, the stuff you heard on Daydream Nation. And I think you're definitely in this era of like, we're just going to be really loud. I mean, these are like it's, you know, Daydream Nation, Goo, and I think the next record we're going to talk about are in the, we're going to be loud, kind of fast, really aggressive, you know, era. And I think they slowly slide down in quality as they move further in this time of their career. But I can't deny that Goo is great. So A tier for me.
Yeah, I like Goo a lot. Actually, My Friend Goo, y'all have been shitting on it. I like that song a whole lot.
Of course you do, Ben.
And it's dumb. I mean, it's dumb as hell. I'm not going to say it's not, but it's this band fucking having fun for once. And I can hear them having fun, you know? Like, I'm sure they're having a great time in the studio, but I don't ever feel like I get a real sense of the band having fun up until this album. That's why I like Goo a lot, for little moments like that. Cool Thing, having Chuck D in there, which we talked about earlier this season. I love Chuck D, obviously. So Goo and Daydream Nation were neck and neck for me, but Goo won out just because it felt like they took what I liked about Daydream Nation, condensed it, and added some more fun little elements that I liked. Lee Number 2 is an unreleased song from Goo, and I liked that song a lot too. I didn't go into unreleased material too much, but I was just intrigued, and I listened to it, and I liked it as much as anything on the album, honestly. But yeah, I'm comfortable with this going right behind Daydream Nation. I'm comfortable with this at A tier. That's where I had it.
So A tier, but in front of Sister. So right behind Daydream.
Yeah.
I think that's proper. Okay.
Out of the rain, it seems to have a new kind of same. Been playing on a simple rhyme. The sign comes alive and speaks the mind. It turns to me and it turns to gold. It turns to sleep. The fast lane slow. It's been way too long. It's been the way I go. The East Coast and to the West Star. But looking out, I thought
We can move on now to the one I thought Andrew would behold, because this is when the band is meeting Nirvana. They're kind of lumped into the grunge group now. They're kind of one of those bands, and they're taking sounds from that and putting it on this double LP, Dirty, released in 1992. And I mean, right away you got some classics on here, 100% being the main one, and Sugarcane. But you have a lot of great underrated songs on this. Wish Fulfillment is the best Lee Ranaldo song, in my opinion. His vocals just hit so great on it and so emotional. And then Chapel Hill too. I mean, that's my dad's favorite Sonic Youth song, and that's the one that was kind of thrown at me really early in life. It's just a really great, consistent song. Now here's where it dies for me. It's too fucking long. Like, it's just too much material. I would have liked to have seen this split up on 2 LPs. They could have really just narrowed down this sound more and really carved out their own place in the grunge scene if they would have just cut out some of the weaker tracks. I mean, and it really just comes in on the B-side. I mean, for me, the album dies after Chapel Hill, really. I mean, Creme Brulee, probably after Creme Brulee is where it dies for me.
Michael, I gotta interrupt you in that case.
Okay, go ahead.
Because Creme Brulee on the original track listing is the final song.
Okay.
So we're getting those unmarked deluxe edition bonus tracks. Those were like B-sides of singles and stuff.
Just remember, we're doing this from Spotify. But
Spotify, confusing as hell. They did not label them, but I've been going on Wikipedia, checking out the track list, and Creme Brulee is the original ending. I think Stalker was on the Japanese CD and vinyl, but that is Creme Brulee is the original ending.
The point still stands, though. I mean, even songs before that are kind of weak. But what about you, Andrew? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see why you said Dirty you thought Dirty would have been my favorite. It's grungy. Everyone knows I love punk, like thrash metal and like 90s alternative. Those are like my big 3 genres. Those are the stuff I kind of, plus other genres I do kind of stand for. But that's where a lot of my music love lies. And I can guess, so I see why you said Dirty, but, I was left rather disappointed, I mean, I still have this one in B tier. I still think it's pretty solid. There are great songs in here. I think Chapel Hill is a good example. I really like Drunken Butterfly, Wish Fulfillment. Youth Against Fascism is fun as well, but I mean, in the end, I think it also was a little too overbloated. I think this album did drag on. And granted, I did check the track listing. I did see it ended at Creme Brulee, and I still think it's too long, and I still think it needs to be cut back a bit. And this is honestly a trend we're really going to see with this band moving forward the next 3 or 4 records. It's honestly too much. It just kind of gets in the way of me enjoying it. So, I mean, it's good. I like it. I like a lot of these songs, but like single-wise, songwriting, the hooks, the songwriting is just not as strong as the previous 2. So
interesting. See, I find that very interesting. You guys are calling this bloated when I feel like, honestly, relative to Dirty, I think Daydream Nation is bloated. Like 100% Swimsuit Issue, Sugarcane, Youth Against Fascism, Chapel Hill, Purr. I liked this album a lot. This was in my S tier. This just works for me. I can't tell you why. I like the rock and roll. I like that the longest song is 6 minutes. They're not wasting 7 minutes. Well, they're not wasting, they're not spending 5 minutes of my time on a great song and then 2 minutes on the long ending or the instrumental passage that goes nowhere. That was my big issue with Sonic Youth before this album, and I feel like they cut that out. Maybe it's too commercial. Maybe the album in general is a little long. I think that Sonic Youth likes to take their time, and sometimes that time is worth it, and sometimes it ain't. But this one, yeah, I think Swimsuit Issues, great Kim Gordon song. That's probably my favorite on here, although Youth Against Fascism is awesome. Chapel Hill, I love songs inspired by true events. That's another one. It's an interesting one for you to have heard when you were younger, Michael. But yeah, this one's a big one for me. S or A is where I think it should end up. Where do y'all want to put it?
You've been having to compromise a lot, Ben. I would be fine with putting this on the very tail end of A, like just about to fall into B.
Yeah.
Because I know Andrew and I both had a B, but it's a strong B for me. So it could be on the tail end of A.
Me too. Yeah, I'm fine with it being an A.
All right. There we go.
Back in the days when the battles raged, and we thought it was nothing. A bookstore man meets the CIA, and we know. Throw me a cord and plug it in. Get the cradle rocking, out with the redneck pig old man, and it's go. A hair in the hole in my head. Too bad the scene is dead. But memories in the shadow, back in time again.
All right. Now we're moving into Experimental Jet Set, Trash, and No Star. I don't know what the fuck that means, but it came out in 1994. That's all I know. And there's a couple good ones off here, but the main one being Bull in the Heather. That one has been covered by plenty of people. They experiment with those sounds of like strumming behind the nut on the guitar, a lot of buzziness on there, and Steve Shelley's drumming is just, I mean, it's
Michael,
Steve Shelley's talked about what?
would you say that it's post-nut strumming?
Yes.
Jesus Christ, my God.
Back on topic. Steve Shelley's drumming is just underrated in general. I mean, this guy can hold.
Oh, I agree. I mean, especially there's some records later where I'll talk about that. But yeah, I agree. I think he really is an underappreciated member of this band.
Here's where it really, I put it very low on my list. I'll be honest with you guys, and it's because up to this point, Sonic Youth has had a distinct sound for every album, and I get it. Andrew, you've made this a huge point in just how you listen to music. It's okay for a band to just be consistent. It's okay for them to just kind of extend a sound for another album. But for me, it just feels like it's a cardinal sin for a band like this to just basically take what they did on the last 3 records and just do it over again in kind of a hodgepodge on this album. It doesn't stand high for me, and it just makes me sad. And it's kind of the benchmark going into Sonic Youth's really kind of horrible years as we're coming out of the 90s. It's not strong for me. I think I had it in D tier. It almost even falls in E, but I don't know. What do you guys think? I know you guys probably had it a little higher, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine is short and sweet. I had this record in B, and the main reason for that is Winter's Blues. The opening track, it's 2 minutes long, and this was the moment that I got it. before this, I was hearing lots of songs that I liked quite a bit. I was hearing lots of stuff where I was like, oh yeah, this is really nice. I really understand why other people like this. I like, I'm pulling out songs from everything. But Winter's Blues, I was like, okay, I understand. You distilled what is cool about you into 2 minutes. You got, like, the vocals sound like shit on that song. They're like muffled and it sounds like it's coming through like a broken bass amp. And it's just someone nicely tootling on the acoustic guitar. And the rest of the album, yeah, forgettable. Like, there are a few other songs. Bull in the Heather, definitely great song. I liked Sweet Shine as well. But it does feel like an extension of sort of their sound up to this point, I guess. But Winter's Blues, I just have to make mention of this album for that. This was when I said, I get it now. Okay, I can understand. I love this song. It was one of those songs where you hear it and immediately you're like, I love this song.
Yeah.
So that was my little moment that I had with this album today.
Andrew, 45 seconds.
All right, yeah, I had this one in C tier. I mean, it was fine. Like I always known about Bull and Heather, but I mean, I was never crazy about the song. And honestly, that's kind of my sums up my thoughts on this record. I like it, but I'm not crazy about it. Like, there's just I like when this band does dial back their sound as far as being a little quieter, a little more subdued, and trade off for interesting musicianship. Particularly with the later material, spoiler there. But this is not a record where that really happened. It's nothing really stuck out to me very strongly. I mean, I'm trying to think of a song that, I liked Androgynous Mind. Bone was kind of cool. That's really, it's really about it for me. I don't really, it just doesn't really stand out to me. I've seen this album cover everywhere, so I was expecting this to be a really strong record, but I was kind of disappointed, so.
I don't know, guys. Can we just put it right in the middle, maybe on the tail end of C?
Yeah, I think that's
I had
fine.
it in D. You had it in C. Ben, what'd you have it in again?
It was in B, but
Yeah.
that's really for one song. So
Okay.
yeah, put it in C.
C. Sounds good.
Way go out night today. Back a long way, a long, long time. There's nothing running free. We gotta time it all. Run out the door, come back when you score. The times will come and you will see a door into all your eyes. And now I'm gone. And it's out, and it's not what you thought it was about. But a life that you know will keep you.
All right. Now, this is where I get a little disappointed in my boys. I mean, Washing Machine is an iconic album cover. The two boys with the Sonic Youth shirts on. It's really the song. It's the album that I see on like all of the internet forums. Whenever there's a meme made about Sonic Youth, I see this album cover. But I just don't get the point of it, man. Like I love the Diamond Sea, which Ben's going to talk about more. But like, I don't know. Little Trouble Girl is good too, but like the A side kind of sucks, and I don't know. I want you guys to take the primary one on this. All you should know is that I put it in D just because I don't know. I don't get it. It seems like Sonic Youth's just bringing back the noisiness from Goo and a little bit of Sister, but just kind of corrupting it. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're just not catchy and they're not memorable songs,
No.
at least for me. But the Diamond Sea is a creative stake in their. It's a creative benchmark in their discography. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that a little more?
Yeah. Michael, I've got good news for you. And the news is that you've got it. You get it. You get this album just as much as I do. This album is my top Sonic Youth album for the Diamond Sea. That is fucking it. Because I figured it out. Sonic Youth made me sit down for 20 minutes and listen to a song by a band that I was before that point developing animosity for. I was like, oh my God, get it over with. So many songs I felt like were too long. Then they played for 20 minutes and I loved it. And here's why. I figured it out. A long song works for me when you've got a carrot on a stick. Sonic Youth wrote the Diamond Sea, which is, I think, 4 verses. And those verses and those melodies and that like 3-chord progression is excellent. So if you want to, you can play that for 3-5 minutes and then descend into noise and sounds as long as you go back, as long as you got that carrot on the stick driving me forward to getting me back to that point. Because it's this song washes over you and you're like, oh, that's such a pleasant melody. I guess Beck covered it on acoustic guitar at some point live. I haven't been able to find it, but oh my gosh, that's their best melody in my opinion, is the Diamond Sea, and the lyrics are pure poetry, not too much. And then there are so many cool guitar effects, and they go on, and there's noise, and the noise washes over you, and then the song comes back, and then the noise washes over you again. Could the Diamond Sea be 13 minutes long instead of 19? Yes. But if I want the Diamond Sea to end early, then I just press the pause button, and now the Diamond Sea is over. And the song it's oh my God, like this is like television's Marquee Moon. It's like Stairway to Heaven. It needs to be that long. I don't know why. It made me sit down and listen to it. I loved it. I loved it so much. Washing Machine is in fucking S tier because of this one song. I don't give a shit about the rest of the album. If this was the only song that Sonic Youth ever made, I would love Sonic Youth and they'd be my favorite band. This song is genius. It's Neil Young. It's Bob Dylan. It's everything.
Andrew.
I don't know how am I supposed to follow that.
I don't know, but that may have swayed me, man. I might.
Here's what I'll say about Washing Machine. I think it's fine. I mean, really, I have this one in B tier, kind of the middle of B tier. I enjoy it overall. I don't agree with you with the guys at the top of the record. I kind of like the attitude of this record. It's a little snarky, but more of a playful way rather than what you got in like Confusion is Sex. I don't want to bring that record up anymore. I like the opener because I like the title track. Old Shelter Girl is cool too, and in a second I'm gonna change my tune about these ridiculously long songs, like over 7 minutes. I was putting up with. I thought they were really good on Daydream Nation, but they're gonna start to really bug me here in a second, and I'll explain it. But honestly, if they were gonna write a 20-minute song, that was the way to do it. I agree. It's just the dips and dives on that track. Like they look, wow, you guys aren't just trying to do noise for like 10 minutes. That's cool. Like they're actually trying to like make a song out of like 20 minutes of the time. But that song didn't feel like it had wasted space, unlike the next record, which we'll get to. But no, this record, I think it's solid. I think Diamond Sea is really good. The rest of the record, you kind of have to pick and choose. It could have been probably cut down. It should have been cut down, to be honest. But no, for a mid-90s Sonic Youth record, this is pretty decent. So bottom middle B tier for me.
I will agree. I will compromise and put it in B just from Ben's monologue there. I mean, yeah, the Diamond Sea deserves its appreciation, and it honestly could have been the whole album and just the Diamond Sea cut up in various parts. I don't know, Ben, can you agree on that? First one in B?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect place. Cut out, fuck the rest of the songs. Yeah, there are some other cool songs. I'm not going to say that it sucks other than the Diamond Sea, but the Diamond Sea, it's an EP. Just say it's an EP. It's in B. I think it's the best Sonic Youth song, personally. It's excellent.
Time takes its crazy toll. Mirror falling off the wall. You better look out for the looking glass girl, 'cause she's gonna take you for a fall. Look into his eyes and you shall see why everything is quiet and nothing's free. I wonder how he's gonna make her smile.
All right. I think this one we're going to end up speeding through. So now we're closing out the 90s. It's 98, and Sonic Youth puts out 1,000 Leaves. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the band right now as we're leaving the 90s and going into the 2000s. I think this is where Kim and Thurston's relationship starts to have its first bit of rocky moments. And, I think there was starting to be some lineup changes, a lot of guests and appearances and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the result of it was just a really underwhelming album for me. I really loved Hoarfrost, but I can't really think of a song other than that really it does what Sonic Youth is supposed to do and put you in this nice atmosphere and then crush you with noise out of nowhere. I can't think of a memorable song off this guy's really besides that. Can you help me out? Is there anything you guys took from this?
No, that's Hoarfrost was mine. The 1,000 Leaves, I think, starts with the perfect example of something from Sonic Youth that I don't like, which is Contre le Sexisme, which is the opener, and it's just like it's like twang, blang, blong, little guitar feedback, and Kim Gordon is just speaking of some such bullshit over top of it.
I wouldn't say some such bullshit because the high point for me was Kim's lyrics on this. When it comes to feminism stuff, I think it's strong.
Fair. The lyrics are strong, but then make it a poem. There are just times like that where you can say, I was reading on Wikipedia that this was when they made their own studio for this album, and it sounds like a band starting to bloat. You can say, oh, I could make a noise collage and talk over it for 4 minutes, or you could not do that. Like the members of Sonic Youth have so many side projects that they have outlets for these things, these interesting things that they want to do. This is just sort of bloat, I'd say. There's not that much to grab onto here.
I gotta say, I agree with Ben. I think bloat is pretty much the word I use to describe this, over bloated. Granted, Michael, I really, again, this is chaotic week, so I didn't dive much into the lyrics with some of these. So I don't doubt what you're saying about that there's some really strong feminist lyrics. If that's the case, maybe it will rank a little higher on my list, but I put this one at D. I'm sorry. I couldn't. This is like this. There were like, hold on. There were 1, 2, like there were at least 3 songs on here that were over 9 minutes. One's 11 minutes, and they're unlike the Diamond Seed. It's just the noise and a lot of tremolo picking. But at this point, they use that so much where it's like it's boring to me at this point. Like, and I don't want to hear that for 2 minutes. Like, it's just Jesus Christ. I don't know. This record was just way too much. This was like trying to cram so much Sonic Youth of everything they do into this just monster, ball of just noise, and it's just quite frankly just it's kind of like I was always being reminded of Tool, where I was listening to this and I'm like, I can maybe handle this in like short bites in like a song, but I do not want, how long was this record? I do not want 1 hour and 13 minutes of this. So it was, this record's just too much. So yeah, D tier for me.
D. Boom.
Bye.
Boom. This is where we get a little very divisive, actually, polarized even.
So, Michael, can I start on this one by asking you a question? We're talking about NYC Ghosts and Flowers, which is released in 2000. Is it weird that I actually like this one, Michael?
It's so weird. This album came out the year I was born, and I'm honestly kind of like ashamed of that. Just because like this is the perfect example of what Ben's saying. Like they get a studio and they're like, we can do whatever we want. We don't have record execs or anything on our ass. Like, hell yeah, let's do it. And the result is this noise collage that's inspired off freeform jazz. And it's like they're trying to call back to their no wave era stuff, but put like this twist on it. And it just fucking falls flat. Like I can't think of a single good song off this. Like they're just all bad. They're all unlistenable even. Like I don't know. Like even when there's like 30 seconds of like a good tune going on, it just gets knocked on its face. For me, it came into E tier. I don't know how this came up so high for you, Andrew.
Well, I want to hear what Ben has to say first, and then
yeah. I mean, what I'm going to say is just going to sound like what Michael has to say, which is boring. Who cares? Move on. Like it was. I couldn't hum you something from this album. It was just, and it was 40 minutes, and it felt like 2 hours. It was just. Make it stop. This was what I was afraid of when I was listening to stuff, the really early stuff. I was like, oh, is this all going to sound like this? It's just going to get like sonically slightly better sonically. No, this is a very bad example of Sonic Youth. Why do you like this, Andrew?
I don't know.
No, please explain yourself.
No, okay. Listen, I like looking. So I was like looking at. There's this website called Sputnik Music. If you go there, it's like pretty much a bunch of amateur like album reviewers will come in and write why this record's good or whatever. And the only way I use that record is just to kind of gauge fan opinions on like records from bands. So I went in here just kind of like, because that's all it's good for against amateurs. Anyone can review on there. And I went there and I was like looking at this, and this is the era. It's like 1,000 Leaves, this one, the next one we're gonna talk about, Murder Street, Sonic Nurse, these 4 records, and like I've been on the internet for a while, music internet for a while, and I've seen most of these Sonic Youth artworks somewhere. Like all these looked familiar to me, except for those 4. And this one especially, I did not recognize this one at all. Looking at like the reviews on there, it was generally low. I'm like, oh God, this is gonna suck. Went in here with no expectations, and I was like, as I was like listening to the first 3 tracks, going through Free City Rhymes and Renegade Princess, I was like, why do I like this? Like, I don't like I don't know. Like there was something about this that I really liked the builds to this track. I think that's the thing I really enjoyed. Like after hearing just these long overbloated tracks that just seemed to not have a ton of like thoughtful structure to them. Like I really enjoyed just being able to sit back and just listen to this band kind of slowly build up to a crescendo in a natural way. And I really appreciated it for that. And I thought, and you guys, it's based on freeform jazz. I know that's not a very hooky record, but unlike something like Confusion is Sex or Bad Moon Rising or anything, the band's actually matured by this point. So, they know kind of their strengths and their weaknesses. So I think they were able to capitalize on that. This is a really interesting record. It has its, dark moments, but also has this kind of lighter, more beautiful moments. And I really appreciate the range that they're able to portray on this record. And then, I don't know, I think the backstory of this record is a little interesting too. From my understanding, they had like a lot of their gear, like their main gear stolen before they had to record. So they had to kind of dive back into some of their older gear and instruments the band hadn't used in forever. And, just kind of the way this record came together, I really appreciate. I can't say this is a perfect record, far from it. I do not like this side 2 stream Sonic, like those weird beat poetry moments. Neither of those were fun. Like the closer was just this weird collage and noise. It's like, oh, we have a sax. Okay, whatever. If they had cut those things out and just made this into an EP, I would have appreciated this one a lot more. So, but as it stands, I think I like it. I put this one in B tier. I know that's going to piss off every Sonic Youth fan here, but I enjoyed it.
Oh man, you're encapsulating what Sonic Youth is about. Just you're becoming the Sonic Youth hipster. Congratulations. Look, Andrew, I'm glad you had a personal journey with this album, but I will put it above Thousand Leaves here in D, and it can be the top of D.
I'm fine with that. No, it's fine.
I can't in good conscience put it in C or above. What do you think, Ben?
I agree. And actually, Andrew mentioned something that should be EP, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. So we're just talking about studio albums right now, right? Mm-hmm. But there's like the SYR series of EPs. What is that? Or albums or what? Do you know what that is, Michael? SYR? It's Sonic Youth, but it's like, it looks like they're working with collaborators and it's more avant-garde.
I don't know. It's just probably just an era. Sonic Youth has a bunch of like these side projects that they go on. Sickone Youth is another one. I can use this to highlight the Whitey album, which is one of my underrated faves, where they put it under the Sonic Youth name, but they start inviting a bunch of collaborators in. Sorry, it's pronounced Sickone Youth. But yeah, it's probably just another one of those things.
Right. So what I'm wondering here at the end of this discussion of this album is, what makes a Sonic Youth album versus one of those side projects with a different name? That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah. I don't know. And it's just like, if it's Kim and Thurston working on the same thing, then technically it's a Sonic Youth record. I can't really answer that for you, or why some projects are under the name where others are solo projects or whatever, but
now here at Dark Corners, all is calm and quiet and good. The kids are up late dreaming quiet questions in a graceful mood. Can you please pass me a jug of winter light? Fold me in an ocean's whim, in sweet corrosive firelight, in the city made of tin. Are you famous under the skin? Familiar with the things you wanted, able now to take it all in, making peace with every hole in the story.
let's keep moving though. And just before we even start talking about this, how do y'all feel about this? Murray Street, right there in D.
Murray Street.
I just thought it was boring. What do you think, Andrew? Because you had this a little higher.
Yeah, I initially put this in the bottom of A tier, but after reconsidering, I put it a little more. It's close to top of B tier. I don't know. Like, to me, again, this is, so I should say this right now. Honestly, like, we're coming up on honestly my favorite material. Some of my favorite material this band's done. I really enjoyed Daydream Nation Goo, but and Sister as well. It's like kind of that moment of this band's period, and then following this record is where we're going to get it. So this is like right before I think they started to become really, really good again. I think what I like about this record, it reminded me a lot of like these, like the better side of adult contemporary of like the 90s, not like, you know, the Goo Goo Dolls or Matchbox. No, screw those bands. I'm talking more referring to like the Counting Crows, the Gin Blossoms. Those are I actually really enjoyed those bands. I kind of got some twinges of the, like, you know, those vibes here on this record. It was cleaner. You know, they kind of slowed it down a bit. It was a little more, this album was really pretty. I mean, straight up, I think that's what I really enjoyed about this. And I found myself really enjoying with this band, oddly, which is this is the weirdest thing for me to say. But when this band kind of dials it back, is a little slower, it's a little more subdued, and it like gives more space to their notes, gives more space into creating interesting licks and you know, moments. And I think we're really going to see that in the next record. So I would say this is just like, this record to me is more than anything a precursor to things to come following this that I really liked from this band. So for me, I think this is a B tier record.
Interesting. See,
Maybe.
Mm-mm.
You can put it lower on C tier. I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fine. You can want to put it at the bottom of C. I'm fine with that.
Then
Here's what I'm thinking. Andrew, you were just the interesting thing about your description of this album is that you were just comparing Sonic Youth to a lot of other bands. And that from here on out for me is a problem. I don't know what happened between the last thing I really loved, which is probably the Diamond C, and this, but something happened. I don't know what it is, but now we're here and Sonic Youth is sounding different, but not good different for me, just like blander. I don't know. They sound less like themselves now. I'm not really sure what happened. Not sure if I don't even think there was a lineup shuffle between then and now. It sounded a lot like we had the Silver Sun Pickups episode, and I didn't feature myself on that one as much. But I listened to some of that music, and that's kind of what this is sounding like. Not saying that either kind is bad, but I'm just saying that it sounds like Sonic Youth is changing with the times in a sort of follow the leader kind of way, and I don't really like it. So it's lower for me.
I think this is a good spot for it, right? And see, Andrew, would you agree?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Heard your name the other day. It's been a long, long time. Ancient history, some would say. Another state of mind. You smell of memory. Felt tipped electric child. She takes a plastic pill. She plays the weatherman. She screams religion kills more than it saves you, man. She painted filigrees. She was the acid queen. She claimed society is just a fever dream. Now you live in the trees and salty seas, tripping out in the
Now we can move on to some good stuff. Because
Yes.
you did say, Andrew, that we're finally reaching a point where Sonic Youth's starting to get good again. And I don't know what happened between Murray Street and Sonic Nurse. I don't know if Thurston was just on some new drugs or whatever it may have been. But Sonic Nurse is the most underrated Sonic Youth album of all time. And just in the past couple years, it's finally starting to get the recognition it deserves, in my opinion. The atmosphere it creates is really reminiscent of Thurston Moore's solo stuff, Rock and Roll Consciousness, which is kind of the record that introduced me back into Sonic Youth when I was young. It pummels you with the noise, but kind of layers it underneath all of this like really bassy guitar. And the lyrics and the lyrical melodies all over this record just hit. Dude Ranch Nurse is such a good song. Pattern Recognition is such a good song. Stones, New Hampshire, and then Peace Attack is the closest thing you'll get to Midwest emo that Sonic Youth will ever do. And I guess that is a sweet spot for me, and I hope that doesn't bring it lower for you guys. But yeah, the sound of this record just never came up on any other Sonic Youth record. And I fell in love with it. And like, I love revisiting this one and just picking out the songs that I haven't listened to as much and just saying like, wow, how good is this? It's so good. I put Sonic Nurse in S tier, honestly. And I think eventually the music community is going to look at this as a highlight of Sonic Youth's career.
If I may take the next reins on this one, Michael, I agree 100%. I loved this record. This is one of the albums I was also kind of concerned about because I looked at this cover like, I don't recognize this one at all. The fans don't seem to talk about it. Oh no. But then like the second I heard Pattern Recognition, I'm like, oh God, this is really good. What? Like, where did this come from? I wasn't expecting this. This is really, really good. I think this had a lot of great dips and dives. Like, I think their band is really starting to learn something. I think this is one of the reasons why I really like this era. We're starting to hear some really interesting licks coming. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'm not a guitar, expert. I'm playing musicianship, so I can't tell if it's Thurston playing. I can't tell if it's Lee Ronaldo playing. But, I think this band, I don't know, like you're starting to hear some really interesting licks on here. Some pretty decent riffs as well, but the licks is what I really enjoy. It's kind of just kind of letting these notes space out a bit and really like creating some interesting moments, intertwining it with like the standard like tremolo picking and noise stuff that we hear from talking before. They're reaching back a bit for their old tricks, but they're kind of expanding their sound in a new direction. This record has some great moments of just being really loud, but also kind of dipping down when it needs to be. This record's kick ass in every way, and I 100% agree with you, Michael. I love this record. This goes in S tier for me as well.
I don't have a ton to say about Sonic Nurse. I mean, it didn't really move me one way or the other. That's sort of what I put this in B. That's sort of what the middle of my list, B and C, were for. Were just things that I didn't dislike it. Didn't really love it either. They reached their peak for me with their epic, and after that, I think my expectations were just set too high. I was going to a point before where I felt like I was grading on a curve. I was like, okay, so I'll put this up here because it's like the best thing I've heard so far, but I didn't really love it. And then I heard Washing Machine Sonic album, and I was like, oh, well, this is S, obviously. And then after that, this stuff was kind of middling for me. I felt like they didn't reach the heights that they could. To me, put this where you want, I don't care. But to me, for me, the story of Sonic Youth can be the story of unachieved potential.
Well, that wants me to put it at the top of A. I think, Ben, if you gave it a little more time, you could see why it could be moved up more. Just like, it takes a couple listens, I think.
Yeah. Well, that is also something to point out here too, is that, Andrew and I were kind of rushing through this discography when they have lots of long stuff and lots of stuff you really need to take your time with.
So,
I wish we could put it right on the line. But
I think bottom of S tier is perfect place for this.
Bottom of S tier. Bottom.
Perfect.
We might be entering another S tier territory. I know it certainly is for Andrew. For me,
spoiling it.
Yeah. For me, this one is great. But I think I'm feeling a little more of what Ben's feeling. On Rather Ripped, which came out in 2006. Obviously, Incinerate is a perfect song. And I discovered some songs that I never would have came across if I didn't revisit this album. Jam's Run Free. I've been listening to that all fucking day, guys. Like, I love that song. And Lights Out, too. Just such a great atmosphere and such a great, like, picture being painted with that song. I think but unfortunately, Lee Ronaldo has his low point. I think Rats isn't that great of a song. You know, after Lights Out, the last three songs don't really hit hard for me. When I see a song named The Neutral, I go into it expecting like, oh, it's neutral. It's not that great. But the A side of this record is pretty fantastic. I would put this in B for myself. But Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, so Rather Ripped was the top of S tier for me. Like, I was trying to, like I said, I was trying to see objective. I may not have done it this one, but I don't care. This is, out of everything I've heard, this was my favorite Sonic Youth record. And that might be partially because I always really liked Incinerate, which is a big single off this record. Really enjoy that track. And after listening to this, I'm like, oh, yes, the rest of the album meets to that expectations that I have with Incinerate. I don't know how to describe why I love this record so much. I think all of its strengths are fairly subtle. Before you had like the atmosphere for Sonic Youth had always been very noticeable. It's very on the nose. How Bad Ryan's supposed to make it feel. You know how Daydream Nation is supposed to make it feel. You know how Murray Street's supposed to make it feel in my eyes. This one kind of had a range, it was so weird. You had songs like Incinerate with fairly dark lyricism, but it sounded slightly upbeat, but also had this really dirty production to it. It's like, whoa, like there's you have a range going on there. It's just not even with just the songwriting, within the message and the emotions that this album's conveying. There are peaks and valleys there within that. I also like the production is not amazing. From my understanding, they rushed through it, but I think the slightly fuzzed, dirty production mixed in with these really clean sounding notes actually does a lot of benefit for this record. I think again, it gives it a lot of interest. It gives it a lot of friction. Beyond that, I think the songwriting is great. I mean, these songs, it's a 15-minute record, and these songs are finally, I'm kind of feeling the same way Ben did about Dirty. Like, oh my God, the longest song in here is 6 minutes. Again, I like longer songs. Oh, sorry, the longest one's almost 7 minutes, The Pink Stream, which is a great song. As much as I like longer songs, I think this band was just relying on that too much, and it was almost more for almost felt like a gimmick to them at some points rather than an actual trying to make decent music. And quite frankly, I think they use every note here perfectly. I disagree with you, Michael. I think Kratz is a great, atmospheric track that they did on here. I really like the Neutral. It's actually probably my favorite Kim Gordon tracks I heard throughout this whole thing. Incinerate, I think, is still a great single. I love Rena. I love this whole record. This whole record works for me. And I know this is often regarded as the most accessible record musically, and I can see that. And some people might then harp on me for saying it's your favorite, you pleb, but I don't care. This record is well written. It is well produced for what it's trying to convey. And I think just a lot of little subtle nuances on this record for me is what really sets us up over everything else for me personally. Objectively, yeah, it probably should still be argued the Daydream Nation's their best, but I don't know, man. I love this album so much, and I was really looking forward to diving into this fully, and my expectations were met with flying colors. So that's why I have it on top of my list.
Yeah, I think Ben might be the deciding factor right now.
Unfortunately for you, Andrew, I'm in the middle, but I lean more towards Michael's opinion here. It's on the better half of their stuff, but it feels and is admittedly from the band sellouty. And I'm not a guy who's a cred guy or gives a shit about a band selling out. I just care if the music's good. The music's all right. Didn't totally work for me. If I was controlling this right now, I would put it probably after the Diamond Sea or Washing Machine. But yeah, I mean, we're rounding it out here with stuff that I don't have a ton to say about. I think there's some good tracks. I think that it's interesting hearing this band sort of try to make their most accessible album near the end of their run. I don't really know what the purpose of that is. So it's an interesting record in that way. But in one of the top 3 categories, I will be comfortable with it. It definitely belongs there. I just don't know where.
Andrew, I have an interesting compromise for you because I know you really favor the next one as well, the Eternal. You have a soft spot for that one. So
Yes.
I think a good compromise would be you can put one record on the tail end of A and one record at the top end of B.
All right. Well, then my tail end V is easily rather ripped. So,
Okay.
um,
I think that's a good place for it, just because
yeah.
it's accessible and it's Sonic Youth at the end of their career saying, "Hey, come check us out. For this new generation of people,
Yeah.
we'll find something you like."
And you know, and for this, you know, I kind of said at the top, you know, I want to make one more point about this, and we'll move on. You know, I said at the top that, you know, I think this band's more about gear than musicianship, and I think that when you get to records like Rather Ripped, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you get a lot of really interesting, you know, picking here. You get a lot of interesting, you know, like your riffs and licks and whatnot. And I just know this album's just a joy for me to listen to, but it also has this weird undertone of darkness. Again, I won't go more into it. I really like this record. So.
You douse my soul with gasoline. You flicked a match into my brain. Incinerate, 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 incinerate. The firefighters are so nice. I remember you so cold as ice. The flames are licking at your feet. The sirens come to put me out of misery.
And finally, we will wrap up on the Eternal Sonic Youth. This is the album that they ended with in 2009. Kim and Thurston split up in 2011, a couple years after this. This was the band's last hurrah at a full-length LP. They did a couple like sessions and live albums after this, which are pretty good in their own right, but this was the last dive into new music in its entirety. And I gotta say, this one is not memorable for me at all. It's not memorable, mostly because I don't want to remember Sonic Youth going out in this era. I want to see Sonic Youth end with Rather Ripped or Sonic Nurse. This one was kind of just like summarizing this era for me, and it doesn't really have the strong tracks that they saved for Sonic Nurse and Rather Ripped. That being said, I think this was a good goodbye record, and it's very rare that goodbye records are strong. I think it's good for what it is, but is it needed? Not for me, man. Let's hear from Ben first.
All right. Well, for me, the most significant thing about this album is that the guy Mark Eibold from Pavement, he's playing bass on here. That's cool. Pavement actually also brings up another point to make really quickly, which is in this last period of Sonic Youth, Thurston Morris starts sounding a lot like a poor man's Stephen Malkmus to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's his delivery. Maybe he's like double tracking a lot of stuff, which Malk was doing a lot with Pavement. I don't know. That's just a side note. This sort of feels so. In journalism, we write with the inverted pyramid. This kind of feels like, you know, your little paragraph at the end of the story you can cut off if you want, and it won't make much of a difference. Like, there's a Kinks song called Hatred that's really cool. It's about the Davies brothers hating each other, and they sing it as a duet. And if we would have gotten an album of stuff like that from these two people who are at loggerheads with each other at this point, but still in a band together, that would have been interesting. But it's not that. It's just kind of like, it's there. It's all right. Also, my final problem with this album, my main problem with this album, is that it's set up in such a way, look it up if you're on the the audio version of this show. It's set up in such a way where it says Sonic Youth at the top and The Eternal at the bottom. Why didn't they flip those? The Eternal Sonic Youth is obviously what it should say. That's how you introduced it.
Right.
They didn't do that, and that is, I wouldn't call it a total misfire, but I don't need to go back to it for any reason. Andrew?
Well, again, I have to say, I really like this post-2000s material. I put this one in A tier for me. My girlfriend, she wanted, this is her favorite Sonic Youth record. I think she pretty much said it's either this or maybe Rather Ripped, maybe even Dirty. It's kind of bounced between those. And we were driving down to a cider mill on Halloween, past, and he put this record on to listen, and I was like, and I got why. I think this record's really, really solid. I think it's a pretty decent farewell for this band. I think they've reached, what I really like about this one, they've reached back into their catalog. They pull out some of the old sounds. I got some of the old snarky attitude in songs like Anti-Orgasm, which is an anti-war song kind of centered around how people lust for war, which, by the way, they ripped off that idea from L7. They did it better on Wargasm. Go listen to Bricks Are Heavy. It's a great record. But that's besides the point. I think that song was still pretty fun. I really like Poison Arrow, and Scare Trickster was really good. Leaky Lifeboat was fun. I think you mentioned, on Goob, and you really because I really like that record because it sounded like they were having fun. And honestly, I heard some of that on here too, on top of, just being able to combine their old stuff, their old sounds, their old tricks with the stuff they've learned from the previous material. And I really appreciate it for that. It's a little long. It's a little bloated. There's probably a couple songs they could have cut from here. But other than that, yeah, this was A tier for me. I know it's not going to go here on this list, and that's fine. But I found myself really enjoying what this band had to offer in the later years. I don't know if I can exactly pinpoint why, but I don't know. I guess I just have a soft spot for 90s sounding rock, so that might be it.
Well, I can think of no better place for it than right there. I think we would all.
I think the top of B tier is perfect.
Yeah. I know the Diamond Sea.
Yeah, Michael, I gotta say, I really want you to do me a favor and do it like a sock and put it behind the washing machine.
I put it there just for the pun.
I feel I'm only against it because it's that really gross joke. So, but I will accept it nonetheless.
All right.
Mission control to brain police. Free love, key energy. Penetration destroys the body. Violation of the cosmic body. Do you understand? Anti-war is anti-orgasm.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sonic Youth, their 15-album discography laid out in tier list form. I know Andrew has limited time here, so we can get right into recommendations. All I would say is Sonic Youth they're all legends. Kim and Thurston are just icons in alternative music. They changed the generation. They changed how we can listen to music, and they inspired so many of the modern musicians, noise musicians, avant-garde, whatever, art rock, what have you, that would come in the 2000s, 2010s that I am falling in love with. Sonic Youth is the roots of a lot of things. And I'm glad you guys had the opportunity to listen to all of it. Yeah. Go listen to Sonic Youth. That's all I got to say. Anything else, you guys?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Cool.
I'm pretty good as well. I have to say, I will be listening to Sonic Youth further. Thank you again, Michael. And I now understand. I think I do understand why they're one of your favorite bands. So,
I've been talking a lot this episode. I started every one of them. So why don't you guys start the recommendations off? Andrew, you can go first if you want to, since you got to go.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I will recommend. We've skipped recommendations this past few weeks, so kind of a backlog of stuff I want to recommend. So, but I'm going to go with one that these two have already heard because I've already shoved it down their throats. So sorry you got to hear it again. But I was browsing through some post-punk playlists. Yep, more post-punk for me. And I don't remember which playlist it was in Spotify I saw this on, but I came across a song called "Promised Land" by Skeletal Family. I don't know. I always pronounce the word skeletal. Apparently, that's not correct. Whatever. It's just one of those weird things I guess I picked up throughout my life. And I was like, okay, it looks interesting. I'll listen to it. And I was immediately blown away. I was like hooked. Like, it's just one of those things you hear and you're hooked instantly. There's just this crazy good blaring guitar riff that opens it off, and just this amazing hook and vocal melody from the lead singer. I forget her name off the top of my head. But yeah, this band's really good. They released a couple studio records throughout their time together in the 80s. I know they switched lead singers a couple times. Looks like they've also released a lot of EPs and singles, because most of their music on Spotify is in like a bunch of compilations. So it must be kind of one of those bands that released a lot of shorter material and released it later on. But yeah, I think it's a really solid post-punk band that leads more on the punk side of that. I really do want to play Promised Land for you, though, and Ben's going to do that here in post. So let's give a listen to Promised Land.
Very nice song, Andrew. I remember you showing it to me, and I enjoy it. I'm going to be playing something that happens to me a lot in this digital age of music. There are lots of times where I'll go on Spotify, I'll listen to my Discover Weekly, I'll be like, ooh, this song's good, and I'll put it on my big-ass playlist. What my biggest playlist is like, 5,000 songs almost, and then I'll forget about it. But eventually, it'll come up in shuffle, or I'll go back there and I'll listen to it again, and I'll say, oh, that's why this is here. And today I had that moment with the song Piss River by Kevin Morby. Kevin Morby is one of those guys who holds in high reverence the same artists I do, Velvet Underground, Bob Dylan, people like that. And he shows it in his lyrics. The lyrics of Piss River are truly poetry, and it sounds like it's going to be some sort of vulgar, weird punk song. It's more in the vein of I don't know, maybe one of your Grateful Dead more low-key epics, maybe one of your longer Bob Dylan songs. Just an excellent song, beautiful poetry. I'm going to play you all of the third verse here because it really moved me in the car today. So I just wanted to share this with everybody.
Do you want to play chess inside my chest? You move, I move, you choose, I choose. And who, I beg like an owl as I sit on my perch and I stare and I scowl. I know I left you, but I cannot forget you. Now I only know how to harm or upset you. See, I came for your love, but I stayed for your anger. You rocked me more like a baby in a manger. And oh my God, Mama, I'm angry. I know you are, darling. She's angry too. And oh my God, Mama, at who? Oh, Kevin, she's angry at you.
my recommendation kind of goes in tandem with what this episode's about, and it's coming out of nowhere because I'm recommending a composer, not a musician. But it's not classical music by any means. Of course, I'm talking about Steve Reich, who is a New York electronic composer. Some of its stuff is electric, some of it's not, mostly to do with strings. But Electric Counterpart Fast. Yeah, Electric Counterpart 3 Fast. These composers, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's really good. And Steve Reich is friends with Lee and Thurston and Kim when they had an apartment in New York, and kind of all of the music that came out of New York, the art and the avant-garde has something to do with Sonic Youth in some ways. So I cannot go into depth on what Steve Reich is about. All I can say is that he's been consistently creating music since the 1960s, so that's something to behold by itself. I don't know if I'll ever get deeper into his music than this song, but goddamn, it's a great build-up and perfect example of rock meets classical, ? So there you go. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will conclude this episode of Sonic Youth.
Yes.
What's our next?
If I remember correctly, it's the next installment of the second installment, I should say, of Hidden in the Mitten.
Yes. I'm
So-
excited for this. Going to give more small bands some shout outs as they
Yes.
deserve.
I love talking about smaller bands. So, that should be a fun one. Of course, hopefully the world's not in flames by that point, but
Might be when this album gets released, or when this episode gets released. Who knows?
oh, Jesus. But hopefully that will not be the case.
Be all on the streets when we protest.
Go back, listen to our protests episode if you need some inspiration.
Yeah.
Although I think that's everything I need. You guys want to add anything else?
That is it for me, Ben Ackley.
No, I think we had some success today. New format that will return. I'm excited for Hidden in the Mitten. I'm taking a back seat there. We're hoping to have someone in the guest chair. So,
With that, what's the thing we say at the end of every episode? Good night,
Good night, Detroit.